and welcome back to my channel, Minimum Player Count. I am Stephanie, and today we're taking a look at the coming soon to Kickstarter game Oros. This is a game by Brant Brinkerhoff. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about what you're going to be doing in this game. So everybody is going to be getting their own player boards, and they all have different colors. Along with these player boards, you're going to get followers, and you're going to get shrine, temple, and monolith pieces that you'll be using later for this game. Now, you will also be getting a demigod of your color. This demigod will be placed on the Ziggurat as shown here on the number 1 space. And I'll go over the Ziggurat in a minute. The goal of the game is you are trying to manipulate the board in a way that creates 2 level 4 land pieces. Now in this game, you are adding pieces together. So if you mash together a level 2 and a level 1 land piece, you're gonna get a level 3 land piece. You are trying to make bigger numbers because level 4s, when combined together, make mountains. Now you might be thinking, well, what if I combine some pieces that are greater than 4? Well, then you would create volcanoes, and volcanoes will be placed on that land tile. I'll go over a little bit of how volcanoes work. Volcanoes will erupt. First, they will fill in that space that it is currently occupying. So if it's a level 3 land with the 1 volcano, it will create a 4 land. If for say some instance you have a level 2 volcano with a level 3 land, when that erupts, it creates a level 4 land, and then you have to decide which direction the lava is going to be flowing. When you decide that, that's when you create new land, or if there's land next to or adjacent, that's when it starts filling that land in to create higher level pieces. The goal is also, once you have built a mountain or somebody else has built a mountain, you can get one of your followers on that mountain, then you can build a shrine, monolith, or a temple. Now this is important because shrine, monoliths, and temples gain you wisdom, and it also helps you ascend your demigod up the Ziggurat. So the Ziggurat, like I said, is this piece right here, and there are 2 sides to this. I do want to also say all the components that I'm showing you are prototypes, so some of them may change and look different, and they may be either enhanced or just changed for the Kickstarter. So for the Ziggurat, you can notate what the gameplay is going like, as 1 to 5 is going to be the beginning of the gameplay. 5 to 10 is around the middle of the game, and 10 to 15, anything after 10 is when you know the game is about to end and you need to start preparing for end game scoring. When you ascend your demigod up the Ziggurat, it will go up the number of spaces shown depending on the type of structure that you have built. Now, if another demigod builds a structure and they are supposed to ascend, let's say 2 in this case, they would actually ascend 1 more. So it allows them to go up the Ziggurat just a little bit more, which can be a very strategic way to play the game. Now let's talk about different actions that you can do on your player board. So I'm going to go through them one by one. I'm not going to go into too much detail, just give you a basic understanding of what they all do, and then we'll go into my final thoughts. So the first space is going to be to shift all land tiles in a row. Again, as I stated, this game is very much about being able to manipulate the board in ways that will help you, but it can also hinder your opponents. You're trying to make sure that those bigger land pieces are near you, or you have them in a position that you want so that you can manipulate them to grow bigger so that you can get mountains. Now, when you are shifting all in a row, every board has a wisdom cap, and those wisdom caps will be upgraded depending on the wisdom that you receive. So again, when you go up the Ziggurat, you're able to gain wisdom, and then you'd be able to ascend that wisdom cap in any of the columns that you choose. So shifting all land tiles, at first you're only going to be able to do that 1 space, then 2 spaces, and then 3, and then you can shift mountains. Anything that is in a circular yellow is going to be end game scoring points. Also, something to note is at the very top of all of the columns, there's going to be an ascend 1, or in this case, The shrine, monolith, and temple don't have those, but they do have it in the middle with a wisdom plus 1 wisdom. So you're getting more wisdom once you build those. What happens with these is once you shift on land tiles, once you have maxed out your wisdom cap, you're able to ascend plus 1 up the ziggurat. The next one I'm going to explain is moving land tiles 1 space. This is what you really need to pay attention to when you're combining and mashing those land pieces together. Those land pieces are first 3, then 2, and then 1 that you can move in pretty much any direction that you want to. But you cannot move mountains when you are shifting, so just be aware of that. The next one is erupting or forming volcanoes. Again, this is all about making those land pieces bigger or preparing them to be bigger for later turns. So you can make a volcano on a space that you want, or you can choose to erupt a volcano. In this case, you don't have to say the volcano that's either on your space or next to your space. You can choose anywhere on the map. The next action is to send 1 to study or return up to 2. What that means is you have followers that are going to be on your board, and as you're playing this, you're going to be maneuvering your followers on your board in a kind of worker placement selection, and anything that your follower is currently on as it has been used cannot be used again until it has been moved and played another action. So you have to be very selective in what you're doing. So when you're sending 1 follower to study, you have to put 1 follower on that action, and then you select another follower from your board to go either to a built monolith, shrine, or temple, or you can put them on your board where it says study. What that does is once you retrieve those followers, you will gain wisdom, which will help you increase certain stats that you want to. So sending followers to study can be very helpful for you in the long run. The next action is going to be journey followers. Journey followers is to move your little followers throughout the map. This is a game where you have to pay attention to where you are, where your opponents are, and where those mountains are going to be forming, because you want to be in the best place possible to get on that mountain so you can build. And I will explain that in a minute. Journeying followers is important to know that you cannot cross water edges. So as you can see with this game, there are pieces that are islands, which are completely surrounded by water. There are 1 pieces that said 1 side has land and 3 sides are water edges. Then 2 is 2 sides land, 2 sides water edges, and so on. So you cannot cross water edges. So you have to manipulate the board in ways that you can be able to move your followers so that they can go to mountain spaces so that you can build and ascend. Now, the last thing I said that I was going to go over is going to be the monolith, shrine, and the temple. Now, each of these can be built on mountain spaces only once. So that means if somebody builds a monolith, nobody else can. And only 3 types of structures can be built on a mountain. So if I go over there as a first person on the mountain, I build a monolith, the next person comes over, they can build a shrine. How that works is the little pieces stack, and that is important because if, say, my piece is still on there, not my monolith, but my actual follower is still on that piece, when somebody else comes over to build, I actually gain 1 wisdom because I became more wisdomous while they had built their shrine. Another thing to note is after you build, your follower goes right on that piece that you have just built, or that structure. And why that is important, because when you do a journey action or a move action, you can only move 1 space in the beginning until it is upgraded. Now, when you build a monolith, to go down from the monolith to the actual mountain is 1 space, and then to go from the mountain to another space, that's going to be 2 actions or 2 journey actions that you have to do. So if you have a monolith and a shrine, that's going to be 1, 2 movement actions to get from the top of that structure to the mountain. And as you can tell, if you build a temple, that's even higher. So what you can do in that case is you can send one of your followers to study, or you can retrieve them. In this case of retrieving your followers, you would take them back to your board so that they are available to be used. Now, when you are paying attention to putting out your followers on the board, the only way you can put followers out is by putting them on one of those built structures. So you have to be kind of aware of what you want to do and make sure you still have followers out, or place them on monoliths that are closer to the ground, so you're taking advantage of your movement. Now let's move on to my thoughts of Oros. So a couple things that I loved about this is that it is a variable board. There are 2 different sides to this board, at least right now, that can change the gameplay. One is a smaller, more compact board that makes it easier when you're trying to learn the game, and the other side is a larger, more, I'd say, robust map that can actually make the game a little bit more strategic and more of a challenge. Now, I've played this a couple times and I've really enjoyed it every time. For me, I really enjoy the fact of being able to place my workers and then try to, I guess, level up all my actions by placing a worker and by gaining that knowledge and then being able to do something else that I wasn't able to do before because I gained that wisdom or that knowledge to be able to upgrade and do those new actions. You are very concerned about what other people are doing because even though this isn't a cooperative game, it is a cooperative, competitive in the type of fact that you want to build off of what other people have built. So you want to be in the best strategic place to be next to those mountains that other people have built so that you can also gain wisdom when they build on it or vice versa. You have to also be aware of what you're doing for endgame scoring. When you're building monoliths, shrines, and temples, you will gain endgame scoring for those. So you want to be using that wisdom strategically so that you can gain those points towards the end of the game. A couple things that I didn't like about Oros is this is a very competitive game where if you're trying to just stay in one corner of the world and build up all of your structures, that's not going to be very helpful for you in the long run because you have to be using what other people have built to really gain that advantage. Another thing is, though it is nice to have those followers and those worker selections, you do have to be very strategic on where you're moving your followers because sometimes you can actually hurt yourself by either not unlocking something or by having too many followers on your board. Another thing that I would say that I would prefer more is if there was another way to send out followers to the board. You have the main way of sending followers out to study or to gain that wisdom by when you have placed one of your monolith shrines or temples, you can send them there, but that can also end up hurting you eventually later if you have only built temples, which has happened to one of my fellow players as we are playing this game. Now I want to thank Brent for sending me this prototype copy to review of the Kickstarter. I thoroughly enjoyed it regardless of any negative comments that I have made. I think this is a very fun game. It's new. It's not something that I've really played a lot of, and I really enjoy that there are different aspects to it of you're also building up your own board, but also you have to pay attention to the Ziggurat, which was very, I think, ingenious of how to actually control or see what is actually going on with the game and how much longer you have to play. Again, I played this a couple times and every time I've enjoyed it. I think as you keep playing this, it gets more and more strategic as you start figuring out different ways that you can manipulate the board and different ways you can use those actions, because every time I've played this, I have not unlocked everything. So far, that's just with the small map. I haven't been able to unlock everything, which maybe with the larger map and more players, that would probably be possible, but when you are very tight on those wisdom caps being raised, you don't really have the option to raise them all. So you have to be, again, very strategic and picky on what you're actually choosing. But again, also making sure that you're raising the monolith, shrine, and temple depending on what you're building. Something I also will be trying out later is the solo mode. This game does come with a solo mode, and depending on the color, depends on the level of difficulty that you'll receive. If I remember correctly, red is the most difficult, with the other colors being less difficult. So you can play the AI against it, which all colors come with their own cards and different difficulty levels, which is super cool. Again, this game is coming out to Kickstarter. I will be linking the Kickstarter description below, so keep an eye out for that. If you want to support my channel and my growth, please make sure to support me on Patreon, or if you want to buy some of my merch, I will also link that down below where you can get cups, shirts, notebooks, different things like that. I'm constantly expanding, so if there's something that you specifically want, you can let me know and I can see if I can make that work. But thank you all so much for watching this preview video of Oros, and I will see you all next time.